Slavery is seen as the main cause of the Civil War, and the debate over slavery had been ongoing since basically the beginning of the country. In last week's video, we discussed events since the end of the Mexican-American War in 1846 that were sort of a prelude to the conflict of the Civil War. So if you have not seen that video, I would recommend checking that out. I'll link it in the description. And in the upper right corner, this is second in a series about the Civil War. Today we're going to expand on the idea of slavery being a cause of the Civil War and see how that contributed to the economics of the South and how important it was to the South, as well as the development of sectionalism. So the idea of regional identities in the North and the South, and this idea can be seen in the different economies of the North and South as well. So how did slavery lead to the development of sectionalism and economic differences? Basically, as the country grew and expanded westward and people settled in different regions of what would become the United States, there were different regional identities developed in these different places. Specifically in this video, we're going to be talking about the North and the South. But there were other regional identities as well. Specifically, one that I can think of is the Western identity as well, because at this time there were already people out in California on the West Coast taking advantage of the gold rush of the 1840s. So there were different regional identities that developed as the country grew into the United States. And these different regional identities came to a head in, as well as along with slavery, to combine and cause the Civil War. So first off, just simply the Northern economy was more based off of manufacturing rather than agriculture, meaning there were factories and urban centers that people go to find jobs rather than owning farms and plantations like the South did. So 26% of the North was living in urban areas or cities and towns, compared to 10% of the South, as we'll get into later. There was some agriculture going on in the North at the time, but that was mainly restricted to mechanized agriculture, so non-slave agriculture as well. And not only because the North was manufacturing, but for other reasons, as we'll get to in a little bit. The North outproduced the South, specifically in terms of goods. The North produced 17 times more textiles, 30 times more leather, and 12 times more firearms compared to the South. Now, just producing these items in themselves was not enough to outproduce the country, or outproduce the South, I should say. Better resource mobilization led to the North being able to outproduce the South, and by resource mobilization, basically that meant getting the products that were produced to people. And the way that the North was able to do this was through the use of railroads, among other things. The North had 71% of the railroads. So again, the Northern economy was manufacturing compared to the Southern economy, which was labor-intensive agriculture. So that means slave agriculture as well. Only 10% of the South lived in urban areas. A huge percentage of the population lived in obviously not urban areas, and slavery dominated the plantations and farms of the South Slavery in itself was not necessarily very profitable. You couldn't really just buy slaves and expect to make a profit real easily, because let's be honest, harvesting cotton and other crops is a hard work to do manually. And that is how the Southern economy functioned with manual labor. But once the cotton gin was invented in 1793, slavery all of a sudden became a lot more profitable, and it basically expanded from there and became a way of life for the South. After all, their economy was based on agriculture, and the fact that slavery was a way of life for the South became very important in their desire to secede from the Union, as we will see in next week's video. So the differences in the economies, combined with the different regional identities, combined with the election of 1860, which we will cover in next week's video, along with secession, to start the Civil War. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe as well, and stay tuned for next week's video on the election of 1860 and secession.